her thighs pressed against the edge of the mahogany desk. The top 3 buttons of her blouse were undone. Had been undone since I'd walked into her office 20 minutes ago. She leaned forward, and I could see the curve of her collarbone, the shadow between. Danny. Her voice dropped to that register that made my pulse spike. I need you to look at something. I was already looking. Couldn't stop looking. She shifted her weight, and her pencil skirt rode up another inch. The afternoon sun through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her created a halo effect, backlit her in a way that made it difficult to focus on anything except the outline of her body. Danny. Sharper now. Are you listening? I cleared my throat, adjusted my tie. Yes, Ms. Rivera. Lily, she corrected. She'd been correcting me for 6 months. I still couldn't bring myself to use her first name. Not when she looked like this. Not when we were alone in her corner office on the 47th floor. Her door locked. Her executive assistant gone for the day. She turned slightly, reaching for something on her desk. The movement made her skirt tighten across her hips. My brain short-circuited. This was my boss, my CEO, the woman who'd hired me straight out of grad school to lead the zoning compliance team for the largest urban development firm in Denver. And I was staring at her like, "The Riverside Project," she said, pulling a folder from beneath a stack of permits. "We have a problem." That snapped me back to reality. Partially. What kind of problem? My voice came out rougher than intended. I moved closer to the desk, maintaining what I hoped was professional distance. The scent of her perfume, something expensive and subtle, like jasmine and cedar, invaded my personal space anyway. She opened the folder, spread out 3 site plans, 2 zoning variance applications, and 1 city council meeting transcript across the polished surface. Her fingers trembled slightly as she arranged the documents. Wait. Trembling? I looked up at her face. Really looked, past the undone buttons and the backlit silhouette. Her jaw was tight. A muscle twitched near her temple. Her pupils were dilated, but not in the way I'd been imagining for the past 20 minutes. She was terrified. Lily. I used her first name without thinking. What's wrong? She met my eyes, held them. Richard Castellano is going to kill the Riverside Project tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. City Council meeting. He's bringing a motion to revoke our zoning variances based on alleged environmental impact violations that don't exist. The name hit me like a zoning code violation. Richard Castellano, Senior VP of our biggest competitor, former city councilman, current shadow power broker who'd spent 15 years building relationships with every planning commissioner, every environmental board member, every building inspector in the Denver metro area. He can't do that, I said automatically. We have independent environmental impact assessments from 3 separate. He has the votes. Her voice cracked. Just barely. Just enough that I noticed. I've spent 12 years building this company. The Riverside development is 70% of our current portfolio. 800 residential units, 40,000 square feet of commercial space. If he kills this project, we lose the financing. We lose everything. She pushed away from the desk, walked to the window, wrapped her arms around herself. That's when I noticed the real detail I'd missed. The papers on her desk weren't casually spread out. They were arranged in the exact sequence I'd need to understand the crisis. Site plan first, variance applications second, council transcript positioned where I could read Castellano's preliminary objections. She hadn't been trying to seduce me. She'd been trying to brief me while fighting off a panic attack. Professional assessment. Critical infrastructure failure imminent. Need to establish load-bearing support structure immediately. I moved to stand beside her at the window. Didn't touch her. Maintained proper clearance radius. Talk to me about the environmental objections, I said. Specifics. She took a breath, steadied herself. When she spoke again, her CEO voice was back, controlled, precise, deadly. He's claiming our Phase 2 drainage design violates wetland protection ordinances, says we didn't disclose seasonal flooding patterns in the northeast quadrant, says our soil permeability tests were conducted during drought conditions and therefore invalid. I processed the accusation through my professional lens, ran the numbers in my head, cross-referenced against federal EPA guidelines, state environmental codes, and city stormwater management protocols. He's fishing, I said. Those are standard delay tactics, the kind of objections that sound legitimate to non-technical council members, but fall apart under expert testimony. I know. She turned to face me. This close, I could see the fine lines around her eyes, the exhaustion underneath the executive armor. That's why I need you. Need me to what? Testify, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., in front of the full city council. Her hand came up, hovered near my chest, didn't quite touch. You're the only person in this company who can explain urban drainage engineering to a room full of politicians and make them understand why Castellano is lying. You speak their language. You translate technical code into policy. She stopped herself, looked away. You're the best zoning specialist I've ever worked with, she finished quietly. And I'm asking you to save my company. The admission hung in the air between us. Vulnerable. Honest. Completely unlike the polished CEO persona she wore in every board meeting, every client presentation, every company all hands. I wanted to touch her, put my hand on her shoulder, provide physical reassurance that we'd solve this. But that wasn't the play. Show me everything, I said instead. I need to see his full argument structure, every objection, every environmental site, every precedent he's going to reference. We have, I checked my watch, 16 hours to build a bulletproof counter-presentation. She exhaled. Some of the tension left her shoulders. I have all his preliminary filings in the conference room. I've been going through them since 6 this morning. You've been here since 6 a.m.? I haven't left the office since yesterday. She gestured at her appearance, the undone buttons, the slightly rumpled skirt. I was trying to make myself presentable before you arrived. Wanted to look like I had this under control. That explained everything. The disheveled appearance that my brain had misinterpreted as intentional seduction was actually just exhaustion. The locked door was because she didn't want her staff seeing her falling apart. The intimate positioning at the desk was her trying to hide how badly her hands were shaking. I'd spent 20 minutes having inappropriate thoughts about my boss while she was quietly having a crisis. Professional assessment updated. I'm an idiot. Conference room, I said. Now, I'll order dinner. We're going to be here all night. Something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe? Or gratitude? Or something I didn't have the professional vocabulary to categorize. Danny. She touched my arm. Light, brief. Thank you. I compartmentalized the feeling, locked it down, labeled it as a contaminating variable, and archived it in a mental folder I'd deal with never. Standard protocol, Ms. Rivera. I moved toward the door, putting safe distance between us. When critical infrastructure is at risk, you establish emergency response procedures. This is just emergency response. So she followed me out of her office, and I pretended not to notice the way she paused at her assistant's desk to fix her blouse buttons. Professional distance maintained. Crisis management initiated. 16 hours to save her company. I could compartmentalize my feelings about Lily Rivera for 16 hours. Probably. The conference room looked like a zoning code had exploded. 12 feet of mahogany table covered in site surveys, environmental impact assessments, city ordinance printouts, and coffee cups in various stages of empty. Lily sat across from me, laptop open, pulling up digital copies of every permit application we'd filed in the last 18 months. "Start with the drainage objection," she said. "That's his strongest argument." I pulled the Phase 2 civil engineering drawings toward me, rotated them so the topographic overlay faced the right direction, traced the natural watershed flow with my index finger. "He's claiming we violated wetland protection." I tapped the northeast quadrant. "This area here says we didn't account for seasonal flooding." "Did we?" "Yes. We conducted soil permeability tests in March, May, and September, measured water table depth at 4 different seasonal stages. Our drainage design uses bioretention cells that actually exceed city stormwater management requirements by 18%. She typed notes as I spoke. "Can you prove that to a city council member who doesn't know the difference between a retention pond and a swimming pool?" "I can prove it to a 5th grader." I pulled out a blank sheet of paper, started sketching. "Look, rainfall's here. Ground absorbs this much. Excess water flows here, gets filtered through these native plant species, ends up in the retention system here. At peak seasonal flooding, which we measured during the May storm event, the system handles 20% more volume than the 100-year flood projection requires. Show me the data backing that up." I flipped open my laptop, pulled up the hydrological study we'd commissioned from an independent engineering firm. Table 4.3, Seasonal Precipitation Analysis. Table 4.7, Soil Infiltration Rates. Table 5.2, Storm Water System Capacity Modeling. She leaned forward, read the tables. Her finger traced the same data path mine had traced 3 months ago when I'd first reviewed this report. "This is bulletproof," she said. "It's peer-reviewed by 3 separate civil engineering firms and approved by the State Environmental Agency." I minimized the report, opened the city ordinance database. Castellano's objection cites Wetland Protection Ordinance 18-4.7. That ordinance specifically exempts developed urban parcels that meet stormwater management criteria. We meet the criteria. We exceed the criteria. His objection is legally invalid. Then why is he bringing it? Professional assessment. Opponent is using procedural delay tactics to create political pressure, not legal pressure. "Because he doesn't need to win the legal argument," I said. "He needs to create enough doubt that the City Council delays our variances pending additional environmental review. That delay kills our financing timeline. Our construction loans have a 60-day approval contingency. If the variances get delayed past that window, the banks walk. The project dies. Your company loses its primary asset." She closed her laptop, pressed her palms flat against the table. "So even if we're legally correct, he still wins." I held her gaze. "Unless we don't just prove we're right. We prove he's wrong. We prove he's lying. We prove he's manufacturing objections for competitive advantage. Can we do that?" I thought about the question, ran probability analysis, calculated success vectors. "Yes," I said. "But we need to find his mistake." "His mistake? Everyone makes mistakes, especially people who think they're untouchable." I pulled up Castellano's preliminary objections filing, started reading. "He's arrogant. He's filed objections across 17 different environmental code sections. That's overreach. Nobody files that many objections unless they're shotgunning arguments hoping something sticks. So we find the weakest argument. We find the factually incorrect argument." I scrolled through his filing. The one where he cited data that doesn't exist, or misrepresented ordinance language, or claimed a precedent that doesn't apply. We find that we don't just defend ourselves, we discredit him. She stood up, walked around the table, stood next to my chair, reading over my shoulder. "Section 7, she said quietly. His wetland buffer zone claim. I pulled up that section, read it carefully. He's citing a 50-foot wetland buffer requirement. I cross-referenced the ordinance he mentioned. But that ordinance only applies to natural wetlands. Our site has no natural wetlands. The nearest classified wetland is 200 meters outside our property boundary. So he's applying the wrong ordinance? He's either applying the wrong ordinance, or he's claiming our property contains wetlands that don't exist. I opened a satellite imagery database, pulled up current and historical aerial photos of the Riverside site. Look, no wetland indicators, no hydrophytic vegetation, no saturated soil signatures. If he's claiming wetlands exist on our property, he's committing factual misrepresentation to a government body. She leaned closer. Her hair brushed my shoulder. I registered the contact, categorized it as incidental, stored it in the same mental archive as everything else I wasn't dealing with. That's perjury, she said. That's career-ending, I corrected. For a former city councilman trying to maintain political influence, if we can prove he knowingly misrepresented environmental conditions to block a competitor's project. The city council doesn't just deny his objections, they investigate him. And your project moves forward, while his reputation burns. She straightened, walked back to her side of the table, sat down heavily. I need to see the proof, she said. The full evidentiary chain, site surveys, soil tests, wetland classifications, everything. I have all of it. I started pulling files. But here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow morning, I'm not going to that city council meeting as your employee defending your project. I'm going as an expert witness presenting objective technical analysis. Castellano expects a defensive posture. We're going offensive. Meaning? Meaning I'm going to spend the first 10 minutes of my testimony explaining why your drainage design is technically superior to anything else currently under construction in Denver. Then I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes methodically destroying every single one of Castellano's environmental objections. Then, I'm going to spend the final 3 minutes presenting evidence that his wetland claim is factually impossible. And then I'm going to sit down and let the city council do the math. She stared at me. You can do that in 18 minutes? I can do that in 12 if they don't ask questions. They'll ask questions. Then I'll answer them. I met her eyes across the table. This is what I do, Lily. I translate complex urban systems into language that non-experts can understand. I make zoning codes sexy to politicians. It's literally my entire professional skill set. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The first real smile I'd seen since walking into her office 2 hours ago. Zoning codes are sexy? To the right audience. I pulled another file. Now help me build the presentation deck. We need visuals. City council members respond to maps and diagrams, lots of color-coded overlays showing water flow patterns. I'll handle graphics. She reopened her laptop. You write the script. We worked. 4 hours straight, no breaks. I dictated technical explanations. She converted them into slide layouts. I cited ordinance sections. She pulled the legal text. I calculated water table measurements. She built comparison charts showing our system's performance against city requirements. Around midnight, her assistant appeared with food. Thai takeout, spring rolls and pad thai and some kind of curry that smelled incredible. Eat, Lily commanded, pushing containers across the table. You're going to need energy tomorrow. I ate. She ate. We kept working between bites. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I noticed she'd stopped typing, looked up and found her watching me. What? I said. Nothing. She shook her head, smiled that small smile again. Just thank you for this. I know I already said it, but stop thanking me. I kept my tone professional. This is my job. Protecting project zoning compliance is literally what you hired me to do. I hired you to review permit applications and attend planning commission meetings. I didn't hire you to spend 16 hours preparing expert testimony to save my company from corporate sabotage. Then consider it above and beyond my job description. Danny, we have 7 hours until that city council meeting. I cut her off before she could continue the gratitude spiral. Stop thanking me and finish those drainage flow graphics. I need the bioretention cell diagram to show 3 different storm event scenarios. She gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret, then went back to work. Professional distance maintained. 5 hours later, we had a complete presentation. 32 slides, 12 minutes of scripted testimony, 15 minutes of anticipated Q&A, backup documentation for every claim, photographic evidence that Castellano's wetland assertion was impossible. Lily closed her laptop, rubbed her eyes. I need to go home and shower, change clothes, look like a CEO again. You look fine. She laughed. Actually laughed. Danny, I've been wearing the same outfit for 36 hours. I look like I survived a corporate apocalypse. You look beautiful, my brain supplied helpfully. I compartmentalized that thought immediately. Go home, I said instead. Get 3 hours of sleep. I'll meet you at City Hall at 8:30. We'll run through the presentation one more time before the meeting. She stood, gathered her things, paused at the conference room door. Danny, she turned back. If this works, it'll work. If this works, she continued, remind me that I owe you more than I can possibly repay. You don't owe me anything. Yes, she said quietly. I do. She left. I sat in the empty conference room, surrounded by zoning maps and drainage diagrams and environmental code printouts, and tried very hard not to think about the fact that I'd just spent 16 hours in close proximity to my CEO, fighting off inappropriate thoughts every 3 minutes while simultaneously trying to save her life's work. Professional assessment. System stability compromised. Require immediate recalibration. I packed up my materials, went home, took a cold shower, tried to sleep, failed. Thought about Lily instead. Compartmentalized those thoughts, mostly. The Denver City Council chambers at 8:45 a.m. looked like a courtroom designed by people who'd never seen a courtroom. Curved wooden benches arranged in a horseshoe, a raised dais for council members, gallery seating for about 100 people, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly deceased. Lily sat in the front row of the gallery, navy suit, hair pulled back. Every inch the professional CEO. She caught my eye as I walked in, nodded once. I nodded back. Professional acknowledgement, nothing more. Castellano sat 3 rows behind her. 60-something, silver hair, expensive suit, flanked by 2 lawyers and what looked like an environmental consultant. He saw me looking, smiled. The kind of smile that said he'd already won and was just here for the entertainment value of watching us lose. Professional assessment. Opponent has overconfidence. Exploitable vulnerability. At 9 a.m. sharp, the city council members filed in. 11 elected officials ranging from mid-30s to late 70s. Mix of backgrounds, lawyers, business owners, a former teacher, a retired firefighter. The council president, a woman named Martinez, called the meeting to order. Item 7B, she announced. Objections to approved zoning variances for the Riverside Development Project. Mr. Castellano has filed environmental impact concerns. Ms. Rivera's company has requested an opportunity to respond. Mr. Castellano, you have 15 minutes. Castellano stood, walked to the podium like a man who'd done this 1,000 times. He had done this 1,000 times. He presented his case. Smooth, practiced. Hit every talking point. Wetland protection, seasonal flooding, drainage inadequacy, soil permeability concerns, environmental impact underestimation. To a non-technical audience, it sounded devastating. To me, it sounded like exactly what it was: a carefully constructed house of cards built on selective citation and misleading interpretation. I took notes, marked every factual claim, cross-referenced against the evidence I had prepared, found 6 separate misrepresentations. 3 minutes before his time expired, he played his final card. "The developer claims their drainage system meets city requirements," he said, his voice heavy with manufactured concern. "But they conducted their soil tests during drought conditions. Any engineer will tell you that soil permeability during drought is meaningless for predicting seasonal flood response. This project will create a stormwater crisis in a residential neighborhood. The City Council has a responsibility to protect citizens from corporate negligence." He sat down. Half the council members were nodding. Martinez looked at Lily. "Ms. Rivera, your representative has 15 minutes to respond." And Lily didn't stand. Instead, she turned and looked directly at me. I stood, walked to the podium, set down my presentation notes, made eye contact with Martinez. "Madam President, council members, my name is Danny Hall. I'm the Director of Zoning Compliance for Rivera Development. I hold a master's degree in urban planning from MIT. I'm a certified professional with the American Planning Association, and I've spent the last 6 years specializing in urban stormwater management and environmental compliance. I'm here to present objective technical analysis of the Riverside Development drainage design." Professional tone, zero emotion, pure data. I clicked to my first slide. The Riverside Development drainage system uses a bioretention approach that integrates native plant species with engineered soil media to achieve infiltration rates of 4.2 inches per hour. City Code requires 2.8 inches per hour. We exceed the requirement by 50%. Click. Next slide. Color-coded drainage flow diagram. Our system was designed to handle the 100-year storm event. That's a statistical precipitation level that has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. The March 2024 storm event, which exceeded the 100-year threshold, was used as our primary design parameter. We didn't test during drought. We tested during the worst flooding in 20 years. I saw Martinez lean forward. Click. Next slide. Soil test data tables. Mr. Castellano claims we conducted soil permeability tests during drought conditions. That claim is factually incorrect. Our testing dates were March 15th, May 3rd, and September 12th. The March test occurred during active flooding. The May test occurred 3 days after a major precipitation event. The September test occurred during normal seasonal conditions. All 3 tests showed consistent soil infiltration rates. Councilmember Thompson, the retired firefighter, raised his hand. Question: how do I know your tests were legitimate? Because we didn't conduct them. I clicked to the next slide. Independent civil engineering firm Haxton Associates conducted all soil analysis. Their report was peer-reviewed by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and approved by the State Environmental Board. Their credentials are listed on this slide. Thompson nodded, satisfied. I moved to the next section. Mr. Castellano raised concerns about wetland protection. Specifically, he claims our project violates wetland buffer requirements under City Ordinance 18-4.7. I'd like to address that claim directly. Click. Satellite imagery of the Riverside site. This is aerial imagery of our property boundary. Current image dated January 2025. I'm going to overlay it with the National Wetlands Inventory database maintained by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I clicked. A new layer appeared on the image, showed classified wetlands in blue. The Riverside property showed no blue. As you can see, there are no classified wetlands on our property. The nearest wetland is 200 meters outside our boundary. Ordinance 18-4.7 requires a 50-foot buffer, but only for properties that contain or adjoin wetlands. Our property does neither. I let that sit for 3 seconds. Mr. Castellano's wetland objection is based on a fundamental factual error. He claims wetlands exist where no wetlands exist. I have soil surveys, vegetation studies, and hydrological analysis all confirming the absence of wetland conditions. If the council would like to review that documentation, I can provide it now. Martinez exchanged glances with 2 other council members. That won't be necessary. Continue. I spent the next 8 minutes systematically dismantling every remaining objection. Drainage capacity, environmental impact modeling, stormwater system performance, each claim backed by engineering reports, independent studies, and government agency approvals. I wasn't defending the project. I was presenting a technical paper. At the 12-minute mark, I reached my conclusion slide. Summary. The Riverside Development Drainage System exceeds city requirements in every measurable category. The environmental objections filed by Mr. Castellano contain 6 factual inaccuracies, 3 misapplied ordinances, and 1 claim, the wetland assertion, that contradicts federal environmental database records. I recommend the council reject these objections and allow the approved variances to stand. I closed my laptop. I'm happy to answer questions. Councilmember Jackson, one of the lawyers, leaned into his microphone. Mr. Hall, are you claiming Mr. Castellano intentionally misrepresented environmental conditions? Careful. This is the moment. I'm claiming the wetland assertion is factually impossible. Whether that impossibility results from negligence or intent is not within my area of expertise. Translation. I'm saying he lied, but I'm letting you draw that conclusion. Martinez looked at Castellano. Mr. Castellano, would you like to respond? Castellano stood. His face had gone from confident to careful. The wetland data I referenced came from a preliminary environmental survey conducted by... What survey? Martinez cut him off. We have federal database records showing no wetlands. You're claiming a survey that contradicts federal data? The survey was... He fumbled. Actually fumbled. I'd found his mistake. The one place where his arrogance had led him to cite data that didn't exist because he assumed no one would check. Martinez turned to the other council members. I'm not comfortable proceeding with objections based on disputed environmental data. Mr. Castellano, I recommend you withdraw your objections and provide this council with the documentation supporting your wetland claim. If you can't provide that documentation within 30 days, I'll recommend the City Ethics Board review this filing for accuracy. Castellano's face went pale. I withdraw the objections. The council voted. 11-0. Objections rejected. Variances approved. Riverside Development moves forward. I packed up my materials, walked back to where Lily sat. She looked up at me. Her eyes were bright, suspiciously bright. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded. Professional acknowledgement. We left the chambers together. In the hallway outside, away from the crowd, she turned to face me. You just saved my company. I just presented technical data. Danny. Her hand came up, hesitated, landed gently on my chest, right over my heart. Stop being professional for 30 seconds and let me thank you properly. Send professional distance protocol. Touch initiated by client requires calibrated response. I covered her hand with mine, held it in place. You're welcome, I said quietly. We stood like that for 5 seconds, her hand on my chest, my hand covering hers. people walking past us in the City Hall corridor. Then I released her hand. Stepped back. I should get back to the office, I said. Need to file the council's approval with our lender before end of business today. She nodded, understanding the boundary I was maintaining, respecting it. See you Monday, she said. See you Monday. I walked away, compartmentalized the feeling of her hand against my chest, filed it in the mental archive labeled Things I'm Not Dealing With. 1 week later, the Rivera Development Annual Gala. Black tie event at the Art Museum. 200 guests. Clients, investors, city officials, industry partners. I stood near the bar, nursing a whiskey I hadn't actually drunk, watching Lily work the room. She was in her element, navy gown, hair down for once, moving from conversation to conversation with practiced ease. Every inch the successful CEO celebrating a major victory. The Riverside project financing had closed 3 days ago. Construction starts next month. Her company's future secured. I was planning to leave at a reasonable hour, make an appearance, fulfill the social obligation, go home. Then Lily appeared next to me at the bar. Danny Hall. She smiled. Are you hiding? Observing. You've been observing for 90 minutes. She ordered a glass of wine. That's not networking. That's avoiding. I'm not good at this, I gestured at the crowd. The small talk, the industry schmoozing. I prefer zoning ordinances to cocktail parties. I know. She took a sip of wine. That's why I'm rescuing you. Rescuing me? Walk with me. She set down her glass, held out her hand. Professional assessment. This is a social gesture in a professional context, safe to accept. I took her hand. She led me through the crowd, past clusters of conversation, into the museum's sculpture garden. Quieter, fewer people. The night air was cool. Denver in late spring, stars visible above the city lights. We stopped near a bronze sculpture of abstract geometric forms. I wanted to talk to you, she said. Away from the office, away from projects and permits and professional boundaries. Warning, conversation shifting to personal territory. Maintain protocols. About what? About the fact that you've worked for me for 6 months, and I've never properly acknowledged how extraordinary you are at what you do. You've acknowledged it, multiple times. As your boss. She turned to face me fully. Not as someone who's spent half a year watching you turn incomprehensible zoning regulations into poetry. Not as someone who trusts your professional judgment more than anyone else in my company. Not as someone who... She stopped herself. Not as someone who what? I asked quietly. She took a breath. Danny, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. Why haven't you ever asked me out? The question hit me like a zoning code violation I hadn't seen coming. Because you're my boss. That's a professional answer. I'm asking for a personal one. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Not as my CEO, not as the woman whose company I'd just saved, but as Lily. The person who'd been undoing her shirt buttons in her office because she was too exhausted to care how she looked. The person who'd trusted me with everything when her world was falling apart. Because, I said carefully, I didn't think I had the right to complicate your life that way. What if I want that complication? Lily, I'm serious. She stepped closer. Danny, I've spent 6 months trying to be professional around you. Trying to maintain appropriate boundaries, trying not to notice that every time you explain urban drainage systems to me, I fall a little more in love with the way your brain works. My brain short-circuited. Again. You... what? I'm in love with you. She said it simply, directly. No corporate euphemisms. I have been for months, And I'm aware that I'm your boss, and this is complicated, and there are HR implications we'll need to address. But I'm standing here at my company's annual gala, watching you try to blend into the background like you always do, and I realized I'm done pretending I don't feel this way. Professional protocol. This situation has no precedent, no established guidelines, no clear resolution path. Personal protocol. Tell her the truth. I asked my assistant what I should wear tonight, I said. To this gala. Because I wanted to impress you. And she looked at me like I was an idiot and said, Danny, are you blind? She's been in love with you since the day she hired you. Lily laughed. Your assistant has better observational skills than both of us. Apparently. So what do we do about this? She asked. I thought about it. Ran probability analysis. Calculated risk factors. Here's what I know, I said. I know that urban planning codes have specific provisions for handling conflicts of interest. I know that HR policies exist for exactly these situations. I know that we can establish appropriate professional boundaries while acknowledging personal feelings. That's your professional answer. What's your personal answer? I reached out, took her hand, held it in full view of everyone at the gala who might be watching. My personal answer is that I've spent 6 months compartmentalizing how I feel about you, and I'm really tired of compartmentalizing. She smiled. The real smile. The one I'd only seen a handful of times. So what now? Now we establish new parameters. I threaded my fingers through hers. Public anchoring. Deliberate choice. Tomorrow, you're going to meet with HR, and we're going to formalize a disclosure. I'm going to transfer to a different reporting structure so we're not in a direct supervisory relationship. We're going to do this by the book. Very professional. Tonight, I continued, I'm going to walk you back into that gala, and I'm going to introduce you to everyone as the woman who built an incredible company from nothing. And then I'm going to ask you to dinner, not as your employee, as someone who would really like to know what you're like when you're not being a CEO. I'd like that. We walked back into the museum together, hand in hand. People noticed. I didn't care. 3 months later, she made me a formal offer. Vice President of Urban Development. New role, different reporting structure, same company. I accepted. 6 months after that, she made me a different offer, the personal kind. I accepted that too. I learned something in this whole process. Professional protocols are designed to manage risk, but sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one. Sometimes you have to step outside the zoning ordinance and build something that doesn't fit the existing code. Sometimes you have to trust that the foundation is strong enough to support the weight of everything you're about to build on top of it. I trusted that foundation. Still do. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more workplace drama romances. New stories posted weekly.